When we are discussing the municipal bylaws, remember they do not replace the national regulations. The municipalities will draw up extra regulations which are supplemented or supplementary on top of the national regulations and can add to it. And each municipality is going to vary. So therefore, you've got to make sure wherever you are working that you are familiar with the water bylaws of that area. The first one that we will have a look at is Mangaung, and we can see that this was already promulgated on the 25th of October 2013, and Part 7 tells us here that an owner shall provide and maintain approved measures to prevent the entry of a substance which may be a danger to health or adversely affect the potability of water or affect its fitness for use. So here it squarely puts the responsibility on the owner. The municipality is not going to supply you with a backflow preventer. It's you as the homeowner that is responsible to fit one of these items. The next one we'll have a look at is Tegwin, and that is also already in 2014 that this is promulgated. And once again, when we look at this, it says that any water from a storage tank, if you don't have an air gap, a positive air gap between the municipal supply of potable water and your installation, you have to have a reduced pressure backflow preventer or at least a double check backflow preventer. Now here it again refers to a double check backflow, but we've already seen that that doesn't comply with SANS regulations. So automatically, even though Tegwin have said yes you can, they're not allowed to take away from the national regulations. So no, you cannot put in a double check valve. It has to be a reduced pressure zone backflow preventer. It also then goes on in 0.751. It tells you that the discharge from one of these backflow preventing devices must be readily detected. So within their own bylaws, they are excluding a double check valve, because in a double check valve you cannot see when the water is going to be flowing back. So it has to be a RPZ valve to be able to see what's happening in the system and effectively test and see what's happening. In 0.76 it here tells us that the owner at his or own expense must now make sure that it's inspected and serviced by a registered contractor no less than every 12 months. So once a year you've got to have it inspected or serviced to make sure that it is in good working order. And it says in Part B, replaced or completely overhauled once every 5 years. But then it's not just leave it there and who's going to check me? It actually tells me in point 2 here, the owner must maintain a record of the inspections and services that is done there and in a manner prescribed by the municipality. Now normally they require that you keep a register of which plumber actually did the servicing, what was done, and the date that it was done, so they can make sure that you are doing it on the intervals that you are supposed to be doing it. The next one we're having a look at is the City of Johannesburg, and we can see that this refers to the Municipal Systems Act of 2000, so that even goes back than any of the others that we've been referring to. In this one on point 43, it again tells us owner prevent pollution of water. Owner must provide and maintain effective measures to prevent the entry of any substance or matter, and it's telling us no backflows to take place of any water that is possibly of a substandard of SANS 241. And again it tells us any part of the water installation on his or her premises. So if it's possible within your installation for water to flow from one section to another, you've got to make sure that there's backflow preventers that will not allow this to happen. And it goes on in point 43A, and it lists a whole lot of these possible places where you absolutely have to put a RPZ valve. Here again it tells us the measures required in terms of subsection 1 are the discharge of water from a service pipe into a storage tank through an air gap. So if you have a tank with a filler valve where there is an air gap between the supply and the tank water level, then that is sufficient because you've got an air gap there. Otherwise, in part B, it tells you that it's got to go through a reduced pressure flow backflow preventer. Again, it mentions a double check valve, but we will see just now that again, they also say that it's got to be visible, inspected, all that type of thing, excluding a double check valve. So here it tells us the owner of premises on which a reduced pressure zone or double check valve must at his own expense cause a backflow preventer to be inspected and serviced not less than every 12 months. So it really comes back. Completely overhauled every 5 years. The previous one said it can be replaced or overhauled. This one says completely overhauled. It says the owner shall maintain a record of the inspections and services. Once again, a record is be kept of the name and address of the contractor who carried out the servicing, the date on which the work was done, and the details of the repairs and replacements that were done. The record of inspections shall be kept available for inspections by the council. So it's not make a note of it and forget in which filing cabinet you stick it. It says that the record must be available. If any of the council inspectors come past and want to see it, you have to produce it. Again, in 43D, it tells us the owner of any premises must prevent the back siphonage into his or her water installation. Terminal water fitting which is so designed that a hose or other flexible pipe can be used. So Bibcock again, lab tap, it reiterates what SANS 10252 said to us, that as soon as there's a possibility of a hose being connected to it, you've got to have an RPZ valve in there. Carries on, mentions underground irrigation services, and once again, any other fitting like your bath filler, combination unit, where water can be sucked from the one medium into another. The next municipal bylaw that we're having a look at is the City of Cape Town, and they've actually been very strict on having these RPZ valves installed. And again, it tells us that an owner must provide and maintain. So it's putting the onus on the owner. They're not going to do it for you. Responsibility is the owner of the house, not the tenant or the person that's staying in the house. The owner must provide the protection against backflow. In the next section, it also reiterates that the owner is responsible for ensuring compliance with the bylaws, but the consumer, the person who is living in the property, is responsible for compliance as far as water wastage and the abuse of water. So if you've got one of these RPZ valves installed, the owner has now put it in, and the tenant or whoever is at the house sees that it is leaking, they are responsible to then notify the homeowner so that the homeowner can do something about it. The City of Cape Town have become very strict on what is allowed and what is not allowed in collecting alternative means of storing water. You'll see in the middle section, these are what is available, what is allowed from the National Department of Water and Sanitation. And rainwater, not a problem. You don't need a license. So here in Gauteng and so forth, no problem. We can put a rainwater tank in. We don't need special permission. We see City of Cape Town, you need an approval of the installation. And everyone, as you go down, no matter what other water you are collecting, whether it's stormwater, groundwater, grey water, you have to have approvals in Cape Town. Once again, it brings to our attention how it's very important to be aware of the local municipality where you're working to see that you are going to be complying to their bylaws. Just a couple of examples of the installations that you can have and what you have and shouldn't do. This is grey water you can use for irrigation and toilet flushing. But you will notice on the picture here that between the toilet and the main potable supply, this pipe has actually been removed. You're only allowed to then flush it from the grey water system. You can't have both connected to the toilet at the same time. So you can be collecting the water from your washing machine for washing clothes, showers, basins. You can flush your toilet with it. You can use it for irrigation. Fine. You're not allowed to use it for drinking or cooking or anything like that. And also we will notice in the beginning here on the picture, point number 1 is a RPZ valve. So even though there is no physical contact between the two, you still have to put an RPZ valve in. The next one is rainwater, and it does a very similar thing. You can see we're collecting the rainwater. You can use it for filling your swimming pool. You can use it for irrigation. You can use it for flushing your toilet, but that's it. And once again, your toilet is not allowed to be connected to both systems. You're either going to have it from potable or from your rainwater harvesting side. And again, you have to have an RPZ valve in place. The last one we're looking at is groundwater systems. It can be used for outdoor and indoor use. So this is your boreholes, anything like that. You can actually fill your pool with it. You can use it for irrigation. Again, you can flush your toilet. You can see there's no connection pipe simultaneously between the potable and the groundwater system. So it's got to be totally separate from each other. And once again, an RPZ valve is present. Now we've got to make sure that we protect the users of the water that we are using. So if we have got an alternative water source like rainwater, groundwater, anything like that, we've already said we're not allowed to use it for drinking water. So we've got to warn anybody. So at any point where you can take water out, like a tap or something like that, you've got to have a suitable sign up. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but it must be similar. And normally you will have it in 3 languages, your English and Afrikaans and your vernacular language of that area. It doesn't help that in Natal you have it in Pedi, because they're not going to understand it. You've got to have it in Zulu there. So make sure that whatever sign you're putting up is going to be understood by the people in that area. Okay, so now we've finished with this section, and I encourage you to now join us into the next chapter where we're actually going to have a look at how these units work.